Greetings, and welcome to the third episode of our Top 10 series, the much-awaited Top 10 quest mods that many of you requested way back in April, and it took a really long time to compose this list, and truth be told, I'm cheating the heck out of it. Not only do we have 12 mods in this Top 10 list, but this is also just Part 1. We're going to have a Part 2 Top 10 quest mods in the future, because Morrowind has just so many quest mods. I mean, if we were to define a quest mod as a mod that has at least one quest in it, Morrowind has about 1,200 quest mods, and a ton of them are just really great mods in general. So today we're just going to be looking at large quest mods, and that is to say mods with at least 6 quests in them. And I'm strictly just looking at mods where the quests are the central element of the mod's purpose. So that means we're not looking at landmass mods like Ten Morrowind built, even though they have tons of quests in them. The quests there are just not the main feature, and so we're just not going to be covering them in this particular video. And we're also not looking at companion mods. So there's no Julian or Jasmine or the Witch Girl adventures in this list. We'll be doing a top 10 companions or a top 10 followers for you Skyrim in-walls in a future video. So just to explain my process here, when I was first composing this list, I decided on 3 different categories to rate a good quest mod by. First, a good quest mod should have a good story, and I think we can all agree that's pretty obvious. Second, it should provide a fair enough content for the player to do, and keep in mind we're only looking at large quest mods. And third, it should take the player to exciting and interesting locations. With that criteria in mind, I've come up with this list of 12 mods. And please just note that the ordering of this list isn't really that important. All 12 of these mods are definitely worth playing. They're amazing mods with amazing stories, and I do highly recommend checking them all out because it will add dozens, if not hundreds, of hours of new content to your game. Anyway, why don't we go ahead and get started with number 10, Scourge of the Lich Father Act 1 and 2 by Dan T, originally released in 2006. And as you might imagine, this mod was actually released in 2 parts originally, Act 1 and Act 2, with Act 1 being released in 2005, and if memory serves, this mod actually won induction into the Planet Elder Scrolls Hall of Fame a few years after release. And it has a pretty traditional start. You run into a random stranger in the streets of Balmora who tells you about an ancient evil and sends you off into a long dungeon to find some mystical item to help fight this ancient evil. And it's a very stereotypical stuff, but the dungeon itself is kinda unique in that it uses the occasional puzzle for you to figure out. And actually you'll find that a lot of the quest mods in this top 10 video employ puzzles of one kind or another, so if you're into that kind of thing, you'll find a lot to like here. And just sort of moving on, the first act of this mod mostly just includes a single dungeon, and if that were all, it probably wouldn't crack our top 10 list. But the second act greatly expands on the storyline, introducing a new town in the West Gash with a bit of a mysterious and dark history to it, and lots of secrets hiding for you to find. This is where a lot of the side quests and a large portion of the main storyline take place, and there's quite a few of these side quests to go around, involving everything from a murder to hidden treasure and recent thefts in the village. Where this mod shines though, and the reason why it's in our top 10 list, really involves the main storyline. I don't want to reveal too much, since obviously the purpose of a top 10 list is to get you guys to play these mods, but Scourge of the Lich Father has a really well done main storyline that mixes well with the traditional fight against an ancient evil trope, but with more than a few twists to keep you interested. Most notably, the main storyline employs some rather memorable dungeons and some powerful fights that you'll probably need to be around level 20 to survive, and in total this mod adds around half a dozen new dungeons to the game, possibly more. It's been a little while since I've played through the entire mod. But one of the things that I really like about this mod is that the choices you make along the storyline matter, as there's multiple endings depending on what you decide. And that's why it's my number 10 top 10 quest mod pick, because it utilizes a great storyline with choice and consequence, and takes you to more than a few memorable locations with side quests that do stand pretty well on their own, and that's why I do highly recommend that everyone check it out and play it at least once. Next up we have number 9, Sran Underworld by Matthew, originally released in 2006 and updated by Wally BB in 2011. Once again, this is another mod from the Planet Elder Scrolls Hall of Fame, and really most of the mods on this list have been in the Hall of Fame at one time or another. Now, Sran Underworld adds a new area and faction beneath the bustling streets of this quaint tourist village in the Ascadian Isles. Here you'll find the dark and sinister Bloodfang Tong, a new organization for the criminally inclined that runs the businesses of the Strand sewers with an iron, blood-soaked fist, keeping the peace in the central sewer marketplace and keeping the sewer rats, or the poor displaced people of the underground, in place. In terms of placing this new faction, I'd say it's somewhere between the Thieves Guild and the Morag Tong. Many of the quests you'll do for this organization involve information gathering, fighting, and killing targets, and you'll find a couple of dozen quests here that keep you interested, including a central storyline and unique memorable characters with histories and personalities all their own, ranging from a Slode, one of the only Slode that you'll ever see in a Morrowind mod, to the merchants of the marketplace, including a rather memorable blacksmith that you'll do a few quests for, and also the members of the Bloodfang Tong themselves. Needless to say, Strand Underworld has a lot of unique dialogue and writing going on, and the writing itself is really what makes this a top 10 mod, that and the unique locations you'll get to visit and explore. Now, it should be mentioned that this isn't really a mod for role players who enjoy playing lawful good characters, to sort of borrow a D&D term. It's really hard to imagine a devout priest or crusading knight playing along with the bloodthirsty criminal empire that is the Bloodfang Tong, but having said that, there's a ton of great content here for more darkly oriented characters or neutrally inclined characters, such as thieves or assassins or people who just don't care what their character's alignment is. But you will need to be a fairly high level to actually finish a lot of these quests and dungeons. I'd say around probably level 15, though the challenge of these quests varies a lot from the early quests to the in-game quests, as you might expect. But in any event, the really great quality of writing and the hours of entertainment that you get from Strand Underworld is why it's my number 9 pick in my top 10 list. Moving on, number 8 is Apostates to Oblivion Beyond the Realms of Death by Atropos, originally released in 2006. Now, this mod has a really intriguing start involving a sea battle right at the very beginning. As far as grand entrances go, Apostates to Oblivion really knocks it out of the park. And from there you'll be taken in and inducted into a secret coven of witches, with their base deep underground composing of a mixture of Telvanni architecture and Daedric ruins. Now, I know a lot of people who've played this mod would probably have ranked it a lot higher in this list, so again I'd just like to say that the ordering here just doesn't matter all that much. These are all great mods and you should definitely play them. As for me, I came to this mod rather late, so my experience with it is a bit more recent and also a bit incomplete. Having said that though, Apostates to Oblivion is a really well executed mod, containing dozens of quests, some of which cheekily play on the Witch and Nord Warrior theme. One of the first quests that you'll do as an induction ritual is paralyze a Nord, steal his clothing, and then take his family axe. There's a lot of humor going on here that's like that, with the poor silly Nords being at the blunt end of it for the most part. Though, truth be told, they do kind of deserve it. They're such silly people. No offense, any Nords listening in out there. All jokes aside, Apostates to Oblivion has a pretty compelling and well-written main storyline that'll take you to a number of fascinating and really well-detailed locations. Apostates really hits the mark on the adventure side of things, with hidden monasteries, enclosed gardens, and partially submerged ruins. Not to mention many other unique places that all become part of a central storyline, and of course you'll meet some interesting characters along the way. From ghosts of dead mercenaries to guardian spirits, witches, and much more. There's also a number of challenging fights, and your character will again need to be about mid-level to see this mod to its end. Not only that, but Apostates to Oblivion utilizes a lot of action-oriented combat as part of its main questline, including some pretty massive and large-scale battles that occur just about at the midway point in the main quest, and these will have you facing off against dozens of opponents, and needless to say, you'll want to be a pretty high level by the time you reach these parts, like maybe level 35 to 40. I mean, my cheat character actually had a pretty hard time with these battles, if that's anything to go by. But in any event, a great story and great locations and dungeons make Apostates to Oblivion an obvious pick for number 8 and the best quest mods for Morrowind, and probably one of the better quest mods for any Elder Scrolls game. Number 7, The Illuminated Order by Charles J. DeVito, originally released in 2003. Now first off, I must acknowledge that it's really quite debatable whether the Illuminated Order is better than Apostate to Oblivion, and again the orderings don't really matter that much, but I will say that the Illuminated Order has always held a special place in my heart as my first love affair with quest mods, and nostalgia for this old classic is no doubt colouring my perceptions a bit. Still, the Illuminated Order is a classic at the top degree, adding a new hidden faction to Vaudenfell that delves into the forbidden arcane arts, such as necromancy, vampirism, Druma technologies, the occult, and even the study of becoming a lich. This fascinating premise of a secret society devoted to all things the Dunmer Temple abhors is further helped by the fact that the Illuminated Order has absolutely excellent writing with a story that'll keep you coming back for more and more over and over again, which blends in rather well with the established lore and also expands on many of these so-called forbidden topics. Though keep in mind that the ending of the Illuminated Order has caused some disputes in the past and may not be as lore-friendly as the rest of the mod. In any event, as you work your way up through this organization, you'll be passed along from one master to the next, each one specializing in one of these forbidden fields. And each one contains a lot of well-written dialogue that really helps to develop each character as a memorable individual. For example, some of the early masters that you'll take quests under include a necromancer and a vampire, who both have some very interesting personalities and also assign you some very morally questionable quests to do as well. And it's really kind of hard to place the Illuminated Order exactly in terms of factions, because it isn't really an evil faction, but it isn't exactly all that friendly either, so I'd say it's kind of like a dark mages guild. But in any event, there's also some fighting involved, though fighting isn't as central an element to the Illuminated Order as some other mods, and you'll be sent to a number of unique locations such as Manamarco's tomb or an ancient Dunmer stronghold that exists outside of space and time. Without a doubt, the Illuminated Order is a unique and classic mod that, in my opinion, stands the test of time and is well worth playing today, hence I'd highly recommend it and why I rank it as my number 7 pick in my top 10 list. Number 6, The White Wolf of Loken Mountain by Emma and Teutonic, the final version of which was released in 2008. This is sort of another classic quest mod, and one that you'll find highly ranked on places like Morrowind Nexus, and there's a good reason for that. Teutonic built a beautiful, snowy island, and Emma created one of her amazing stories with numerous quests to go alongside of it. Much like Emma's other mods, such as Constance and the Witch Girl Adventures, which will feature in a top 10 companions mod video one of these days, the White Wolf of Loken has a really well-written storyline that revolves around the local nobility, the people of the village, and a mysterious white wolf that's taken as a sign of good fortune amongst the townsfolk. Now, before I delve too much into the story here, let me first acknowledge that this is indeed a landmass mod, as well as a quest mod. It adds a new island just to the east of Solstein, but I consider this to be more of a quest mod than a landmass mod, hence its inclusion on this list. Though it is a very well crafted island that serves as a memorable location for many of the adventures that you'll find here, from the snowy Loken village overlooked by the impressive ramparts of the castle above, to the scenic winter coastline, home to a singular lighthouse and hut that blends in very well with the terrain, to the deep valleys on the other side of the island. This is a landmass that is simply gorgeous and well worth the adventure. And it helps that the quests match against this backdrop perfectly, with well-realized characters, an extremely well-written central storyline, and numerous side quests that will keep you occupied during your stay, and these range to a variety of different activities, like the standard fare, find the missing person quest that you'll see in just so many quest mods. And like many of the quest mods on this list, you'll find plenty of opportunities to explore and investigate the goings-on and history of the locations you're visiting here, as well as solve a few local mysteries and find some pretty unique items. There's also a lot of services in town, and a lot of the NPCs will have unique dialogue and different subjects that are unique to this area. There's also a decent amount of fighting, though you won't necessarily have to be a high level to survive. I'd say a ballpark figure would be around the same level as most of the Blood Moon content that you'll see in the expansion, since there isn't really anything too difficult here, though there are a few minorly large fights, and in the end, this combination of a beautifully crafted island and a story that matches it perfectly makes this my number 6 pick in my top 10 list. Number 5, The Black Mill by Bilbo Willowtree, released in final form in 2005. This mod is, in many ways, a product of its time, fully embracing the spirit of a story infused with wild adventure that'll send you from one place to the next as part of an epic questline, which was a lot more common in RPGs released in the early 2000s, and in fact you'll find a lot of references to Fable in the Black Mill. It all starts out in Sedanin, where you'll meet a batch of Temple Inquisitors investigating some mysterious goings-on and request your assistance on the matter. From there, you'll be crawling through many forgotten places on Voddenfell as you piece together the story before you, from answering riddles in unkept cellars to fighting undead minions through ancient mines. The Black Mill will definitely keep you on your feet, employing some of the puzzles that I mentioned before, and more than a few scripted encounters and traps that could lead to an early grave if you're not being careful. A great example of one of these traps is the famous Indiana Jones style falling ceiling trap that you can sort of see there. And while there's a lot of combat in the Black Mill, and you'll need to be at least mid-level to get through to the end, the real star of this mod is probably Sunset Isle, a new landmass with a massive city for you to explore. Now, I know, again with the landmass mods, but in the case of the Black Mill, the story is really the central focus. This island and its city is sort of secondary to the main quest, and acts more as a location you get to visit as part of that questline. And it really is a very unique and alien-looking city, with massive cathedrals and strange, almost mushroom-like towers over towards the northern end. The Black Mill is definitely all about creating an epic and exciting adventure for you to partake in, and while there are side quests, they're not quite as interesting as everything you'll get to do as part of the main quest. And the Black Mill absolutely hits the nail on the head in the department of interesting places to visit. Though as you'll see if you play this mod, some corners are cut in the details department, and if I may say so, I'd say it takes a little too much inspiration from the Fable games, and not enough from Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls games. And a particular criticism is that the Black Mill doesn't exactly have the trademark freedom that the Elder Scrolls games are associated with, and has more of that linear quality associated with the Fable games. But all in all, it's still an amazing roller coaster ride, and the locations and the story are one of the main reasons why I rank it as my number 5 top pick in the top 10 quest mods of all time for Morrowind. Number 4, Uver's Legacy by Superstar, last released in 2014 with an expected update coming in possibly 2016. Now this is probably the first mod on this list, and probably also the only one, that's still sort of being worked on. Superstar has a lot of plans for Uver's Legacy yet, and she talks about some of the new quests and features that are going to be in the next version in the interview we did with her way back in, I believe it was April or so. But in any event, Uver's Legacy might seem like an odd choice for a top 10 quest mod list, since it is kind of a house mod of sorts. But the way I see it is that it adds a ton of quests for Telvanni characters, and in particular goes into quite a bit of detail with the characters it introduces, weaving a number of interesting and sometimes amusing personalities for you to interact with, such as a full staff, an apprentice you can take on, and other characters that you'll meet as a result of doing quests for these new additions to your stronghold. A large part of the story of Uver's Legacy doesn't necessarily revolve around any particular objective or ancient evil like so many other mods, but instead revolves more around these personalities and these people that you get to know, making it a rather unique standout. And of course, you'll find Superstar's trademark humor throughout the mod, from amusing little details like a quest to infiltrate the chef's cookie jar, to the interactions between the staff and the dialogue options you have to interact with them. While certainly not as combat heavy as other quest mods, most of the combat is in terms of dialogue, story writing, and the quests that you'll do, Uver's Legacy more than makes up for this lack of combat with extremely well written and amusing dialogue that'll keep you entertained and immersed, which personally makes me really excited for Superstar's new novel. Whenever it gets released, I shall most definitely be one of the first in line to check it out. But I am sort of getting off topic here. I should also mention that Uver's Legacy does still have a lot of adventure and new locations for you to discover as well, from a mysterious upholsterer's guild to a network of Telvanni mines with a rather distinct town to check out. Naturally, you'll discover most of these locations as a result of quests that you'll do for the new characters that have been added to your stronghold, as well as Fast Eddie in the Telvanni Council House. And another feature that I almost forgot to mention is that Uverse Legacy does add a new gameplay element to Morrowind, specifically Inscription, which I believe is sort of like creating enchanted scrolls with spells on them and stuff like that. All of this, and especially the excellent writing, make Uverse Legacy my number 4 pick of the top 10 quest mods of all time for Morrowind. Number 3, Rise of House Telvanni by Pozo, Corpic777, and BHL, last released in 2011. For many of you, the inclusion of this mod so near the top of the list will come as no surprise. Rise of House Telvanni is the ultimate Great House quest expansion mod, adding dozens of new quests for you to do after you become Archmagister of the Telvanni, directing the course of the Great House and all of its followers. As part of this expanded questline, you'll get to select new masters to help lead the house, and even get to decide the ultimate fate of the Mages Guild on Vvardenfell. It truly is a very expansive quest mod with massive choices and consequences for your actions that'll determine not just the course of the Telvanni, but the course of Vvardenfell, and it comes with a well-written and parsed-out story questline that logically connects each decision that you make. The mod also does an excellent job of expanding the history and characters of Great House Telvanni, allowing you to summon past Archmagisters, including the one that you may or may not have killed, and question them about their history and ask for their advice. Many of these characters are well realized with fairly detailed backstories. You'll also get to experience some pretty unique locations as part of this questline, including some tough battles that you'll need to be a fairly high level to get through, though if you've reached the rank of Archmagister, chances are you'll probably be fine by this point. If I had to select a level that you should probably be in order to play through Rise of House Telvanni, it would probably be around level 20 to level 25, and as you progress through this questline and start battling these dozens of opponents, you'll pick up more than a few unique items that'll help you out further down the line. And you also get to decide how you deal with the other great houses and the Imperials on Vvardenfell. And that said, by far and away the biggest appeal of Rise of House Telvanni is seeing the house grow and expand, with new strongholds popping up all over Vvardenfell, and watching as the encroaching roots of the Telvanni conquer all in their path, from the Imperials up here in Dagonfell to rival great houses. As you can definitely see here with all these roots that have just taken over this northern island of the Sheogorath coast. And each of these strongholds has a specific purpose, as you'll discover, but I'll try not to spoil anything at this particular moment. Point is, Rise of House Telvanni takes the politics of the great houses in an all-new direction, with exciting quests and adventures. Hence why it's my number 3 pick, and really the only downside is that the same has never been done for the other great houses. Number 2, The Underground by Carl, originally released in 2006. Some of you may remember this mod from the Vampire episode of Morrowind Modding Showcases, and as I said back then, it really is one of the best quest mods ever created for any Elder Scrolls game. And as far as I'm concerned, it's in a statistical tie for the number 1 spot. The Underground is one of Carl's greatest accomplishments. He was a very talented modder, and it was a great blow to the community when he passed away in 2013. But in any event, the Underground is a massive quest adventure mod that starts out in the sewers of West Balmora and will eventually lead you to meet a vampire of the opposite sex, and in this video I'm playing as a male character, so you'll see a female vampire here, and you'll quickly start doing quests for this vampire as you search for something called the Ring of Awareness, eventually taking you to a demon bar called, as you may have guessed, the Underground. Without a doubt, the Underground is heavily influenced by goth culture and television shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and also the spin-off series Angel, and those of you who have watched Angel actually probably remember that there's a demon bar included in many of the early seasons of that show, which is a sort of similarity to the Underground here. And the Underground is just chock full of vampire lore and other fun tidbits. And where the Underground really shines is in its scripting and in its locations, from the rave dancing of the Underground bar to getting shrunk to fit through small doors and walking around upside down rooms. The Underground is just full of places and experiences that you'll never forget. There's also a good bit of character development, with a number of unique characters and side quests for you to find, with well-written backstories, and often peculiar personalities. And it should also be noted that the underground, suitably enough, adds a massive set of dungeons beneath Vardenfell that allow you to travel from city to city without ever having to go above ground and get into the sunlight, which is, very convenient if you're a vampire character. Now, you guys are probably getting a little tired of hearing this, but the Underground, like most of the quest mods that we've been featuring, is a pretty challenging mod. Not only does it have a ton of fights, so you'll probably need to be a pretty high level in order to survive, like level 40 or even level 50, but it also has plenty of puzzles that are also challenging by themselves, and you'll need to pay close attention and carefully examine the quest dialogue and your journal entries in order to advance in the main quest line. And in any event, good writing, excellent locations, and one of the greatest epic adventures that you're like to go on in any Elder Scrolls game all makes the Underground an easy number 2 pick and arguably a tie for number 1 for my overall top 10 Morrowind mod quest list. Finally, we have number 1, Lothavor's Legacy by Earstam, originally released in 2005. So here we are, my number 1 top pick for the best quest mod for Morrowind, Lothavor's Legacy. Though again, I think this is tied with the Underground to a degree. But the reason why this is my number 1 pick is because Lothavor's Legacy is, well, a very different type of quest mod that kinda just stands on its own. It starts out innocently enough. A Nord asks you to travel to a forsaken island to look for a lost friend who has last been seen there. And let me just say, it's a very well crafted island, with cliff faces, a small gathering of buildings atop the heights, and a unique geographical setting that makes for a very memorable backdrop to the story that you're about to discover. All of the inhabitants of this island are unique. They all have dialogue and personalities, and you can often make choices on how you interact with them, and this might reflect their attitude towards you. At first they appear to be normal island residents, with daily concerns and small quests you can help them out on. But you'll quickly note the rather pervasive purple eyes, and a deep, troubling mystery that surrounds the entire place. Now, one of the really standout features of Lothavor's Legacy is actually full NPC scheduling. These aren't your normal, stand-around, do-nothing Morrowind NPCs. These characters have schedules, and you can find them in different places at different times of day. Sometimes they're catching a meal, sometimes they're taking a walk along the beach, sometimes they're just forlornly looking out to sea on the docks, and at night they go to bed. It cannot be understated how impressive this is. This mod came out in 2005, before Oblivion even came out, and Morrowind was never designed to have fully scheduled NPCs like Oblivion. It really is quite the scripting accomplishment to get it to work at all in Morrowind, and makes for a much more immersive experience that helps enhance the storyline. Having said that though, like most quest mods, Lothavor's Legacy does have dungeons and other deep dark places for you to dwell in, but it's all connected to the central mystery behind the island, and you'll even start having disturbing dreams about what's really going on here. And you'll be in for one of the best made and shocking stories ever created for a Morrowind mod, or possibly even an Elder Scrolls mod period. If the Underground had exciting locations, Lothavor's Legacy has an exciting and intriguing story, which is what makes it my number 1 pick for best Morrowind mod ever made. And I don't want to really make any spoilers here, but I'll just leave off here to beware the color purple, Outlander. Now that we're done with our top 10, it's time for the honorable mentions, and our first one is the Sable Dragon by Pluto, which was released in final form in 2009 with an Open Morrowind update released in 2015. The Sable Dragon has long been one of my favorite quest mods, and it kind of pains me that I wasn't able to get it into the top 10 itself. But when it comes down to it, Morrowind just has so many great quest mods that there just wasn't enough room, hence the honorable mention. As for what the Sable Dragon is, it can best be described as a D&D style quest mod, with a single tavern that's full of unique characters, each of them with backstories and lots of unique dialogue, who each have their own little problems and errands that they need the player to help with. In total, there's about 13 quests included here, and they range from retrieving lost family heirlooms to killing cultists and finding missing persons. And most of this involves new dungeons that have been added all over Vattenfell for you to discover and explore. And again, it's all very D&D-ish, and definitely a lot of fun that can be played by characters at really nearly any level. The tavern itself is also a pretty unique setting. Many of the NPCs have unique appearances, and the attention to detail is quite obvious and makes for a memorable time. Really, the main downside that keeps this mod from being in the core 10 is that there isn't really a central storyline, and it's more dispersed through several individual stories that are over fairly quickly, leaving you to move on to the next one right away without getting too attached to that character. But with all that said, there's plenty of fun Easter eggs and a few puzzles in here as well. And the number of dungeons that you'll find in the Sabled Dragon more than makes up for the lack of extensive quests and a central storyline, because there's plenty of things to find in these dungeons, especially hidden loot. Pluto hid an absolute ton of loot throughout the layouts of his dungeons in often peculiar and strange places, along with a number of unique items that you'll only find in this mod, and that's really part of the appeal and fun of the Sabled Dragon, is trying to track all these items down, and why it gets an honorable mention from me, along with the fact that it's a very open mod that can be played by just about any type of character at any type of level. So there's really every reason to check it out and play it for yourself. Now for our second honorable mention, we have Trade Disputes by Dalen, originally released in 2003 and updated in 2014. Trade Disputes is yet another one of my favorite quest mods that just didn't quite make the list, unfortunately, and it's a rather old one as well. Originally being released not long after Morrowind itself, Dalen released a number of really high quality adventure mods back in the day, and Trade Disputes is definitely one of those. And it takes place at a new fort near the city of Nissus, and the central storyline revolves around the trade negotiations between the Imperials and the resident orcs of a nearby island and fishing village. The negotiations have stalled, and each side has something to hide from the other, and the player is asked in as an outsider to just sort of step in and sort through the mess and ultimately decide who'll come out the better in the end. Like any good quest mod, there's a lot of investigating for the player to do, both at the fort and on the island, each of which are well crafted and full of details that make you believe that they're really being lived in by the characters that inhabit it. There's also a number of side quests involving thefts and possible piracy, as well as lots of new dialogue that explain the history of the island and the curiously peaceful orcs who live there, and the perhaps somewhat mysterious background that they're trying to hide. Now, it has to be said that Trade Disputes doesn't have much of a combat focus. In fact, there aren't very many combat situations at all, and what few there are for the most part optional. In fact, if memory serves correctly, Trade Disputes adds a smuggling group that you can choose to engage in combat with, but you can instead negotiate with them and come to a peaceful settlement. And that's just a unique aspect of Trade Disputes that I really like. And it also makes the mod pretty openly accessible to players of all levels. Pretty much anyone can play this mod because of the lack of combat, though it could in certain situations help to have a high speechcraft skill in order to get through to the later stages of the mod. Now, having said all that, what makes Trade Disputes really stand out is the nature and weight of the decisions the player must make, which can either benefit the Imperials or the Orcs, depending on what secrets the player decides to uncover. And this sort of multi-branched ending is always a good thing in quest mods. Not only does it add replayability, but it also encourages the player to investigate everything, and that's why it's my second honorable mention and another mod I think is fully worth checking out. Now that pretty much wraps up this top 10 quest mod video, and I know I probably forgot a few major quest mods out there, and that's bound to happen with over 1200 quest mods from Morrowind, so do let me know about any mods I may have missed in the comments below, and also we'll be doing a top 10 small quest mods from Morrowind next time, so let me know about any small quest mods that you really think deserve a shout out in the comments, and we'll try and get to them if at all possible. And anyway, thanks for watching this video, and do leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time with our next batch of top 10 mods for Morrowind.